Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today we'll masech this Gittin daf Samach Gimel. We're going to begin on the bottom of Samach Beis, Amud Beis, 4 lines from the bottom with the word Itmar. So the Gemara tells us as follows. If she told the Shliach, Havi li Giti. Now, as we already established at the beginning of this parak, the din is that she can appoint a shliach l'kabbalah, namely, a shliach to accept the get on her behalf. On the other hand, the husband can make a shliach l'holacha, a shliach to bring the get to her. She technically should not be able to make a shliach l'holacha, but she used the language of havili giti. Now, the ishtacha amra, now, when the shliach said the statement, he said it incorrectly, and he said, Hiskabeli giti, be makabel the get. I'm being makabel the get, which is what she would have really have told him. Now, v'hu oimer, now the husband says, Heil kamash amra, you can do as she said, which means it's not based on his false report of Hiskabeli giti, but rather on her language of havili giti. So in this, in that situation, even when she receives the get, it's not good because she appointed him as a shliach halacha, which she's not allowed to do. Shmamina adibor didei kasamach. We say that when it comes to the words of it's his words that the husband relies on. Dia dibor dida kasamach. If we go based on her words, we should say that it is a good gerushin. Why? Says Rashi, because the husband also made him into a shleach halacha by giving the get. So the second that she receives the get, that should be good enough. So look at Rashi. Dibor didach samach da'achikamalei ano yadana ela kitakamer ihi masranale nehalich. I don't know what you're saying or whatever the shliach said, but you should do whatever she said. So since the get isn't good, we say the husband is relying on the shliach's words, and the shliach's words were wrong. Okay. So, in other words, he thought maybe that it was a shliach l'kabbalah, which is what the shliach's supposed to be, and that's what he said. So, since he was being samich on him being a shliach l'kabbalah, even though he actually gave the get to the woman, it won't work. Omer Avashi hachi hashta. Bishlama, I can understand. Iyat mar ibcha. If let's say it was the other way around. What's the other way around? She correctly says, Hiskabeli giti, that I want you to be makabel the get, which is what he's supposed to be. She's allowed to appoint a shliach kabbalah. And then the shliach says to the Baal, the ishtacha amr, that your wife said, havili giti, that I'm a shliach halacha. V'hu amr hel kamash amr, do what she says. V'amr nacham rabu amr kivan she'giget liyadu megarashas. In that situation, it would be a good megarashas. Am adidibor didaka hudika samach. In that situation, we say the husband's relying on the woman's words. And the woman, in fact, did the right thing by making him the shliach into a shliach kabbalah, which she's allowed to do. So even though the shliach said the words incorrectly, it doesn't matter. It's still a good get because she, in fact, said the right thing, and the husband is being samech on what she said. Inami liyada. Okay. Alma di bordidahu de kasamach inami liyada, to her hands. When it gets to her hands, di bordide kasamach, then we're samich on his words. Dalahacha mishum di akri shleach l'shuchusei v'gamri hu de amar shleach l'kabbalah havyan v'hoylacha l'havina. So this is not a proof. The shliach doesn't want to go all the way back to her, so he lied and said he was a shliach l'Kabbalah. Again, the first case we just started off with was that she made him into a shliach halacha, which technically is not, she can't do. But you would think at least when she gets the get, that should be good enough. So the shliach knew what he was doing. He knew he was appointed as a shliach Kabbalah, namely he's going to get the get. He was appointed as a shliach halacha, that he actually has to bring the get to her. And the shliach, upon accepting the get, that's not enough. But he lied, and he said, no, it was made into a shliach Kabbalah, so this way, the second that I'm makabel to get, then she's divorced, because he didn't really want to go back to her, right? So, in this situation, again, it's not a proof. The shliach doesn't want to go all the way back to her, so he lied and said he was a shliach Kabbalah, for her to be divorced once it reaches his hands, the shliach's hands. He therefore is removing the shlichus the woman gave him, that of being a shliach l'hoylacha. So that's why it's not a good get, because the shliach removed himself completely from this shlichus. Amr Rav Huna bar Chia Tashma Ha'omer Hiskabel get zel ishti. Now again, here it's the opposite. The husband makes a shliach, but a shliach Kabbalah. He can't do that. He can't make a shliach to say, I'm giving you the get, and as soon as you get the get, she's divorced. He can make a shliach halacha to bring the get to her. But he said his skabel. Oh, hoylach get zeli ishti, ratzalachsu yachser. So if he wants, the husband has the ability to retract, because it's necessary for him to be able to have the get brought to her, because he can't make her into a shliach. He can't make a shliach into a shliach Kabbalah. Time of the ratzah, which is mashma. That's only if he wants to stop it in the middle. Mashma hol ratzah haviget, which is mashma. Let's say the get continues to go in transit and eventually gets to her hands. Once it gets to her hands, it's a get. V'mai habala bar shavi shliach Kabbalah, who the husband cannot make a shliach Kabbalah. He can only make a shliach halacha. So how is it a get once she gets it? Must be el amrina kivan shenasan in of a garsha. Since he had the intention to divorce her, Meimer Amar Tigarish Kolhecha Demigarsha. The husband can't, again, make a shliach into a shliach halacha. That he can't do. Still, it's a get, since he really wants to divorce her. So I meant to make him into a shliach halacha. And therefore it works. Hachinami, why don't we say the same thing? Kivan Shanasan Edav Garsha, since he was intending to divorce her, Meimer Amar Tigarish Kolhecha Demigarsha. In the situation where she said that I want you to be a Havili Giti, be a Shliach Halacha, which just like he can't make a Shliach Kabbalah, but still it works once she gets the get. So why don't we say if she makes a Shliach Halacha, she should also be divorced as soon as she gets the get? Why is there a difference? The man knows that he cannot really make a shliach Kabbalah. He can't give a get to a random person as a shliach and all of a sudden she's divorced. He knows that doesn't work. So therefore, the fact that he even said it doesn't really mean anything. The Gamar B'Nasal Hashem Hoylacha. His real intention was to make him to a shliach halacha. So hacha toy. Here the husband made a mistake. Basically, as we're going to see, it's possible what he was trying to do was he knew maybe the shliach wasn't going to do his shliachus of bringing it to her. So he said, you're a shliach Kabbalah. But the truth is, he knows he can't make it shliach Kabbalah. But once he gets the get, he realizes, oh, you know what? Now I have to physically go and bring it to her. Okay, let's look at question 1. Baal Shamal Shlucho. If a husband says to a shliach, Hiskabel get zel ishti. Again, he can't make a shliach Kabbalah. V'hari ein yachal asa shliach Kabbalah. Ma tam she'im hayel shliach ishto. How come if the husband actually doesn't stop it and the shliach brings it to the woman, that it's a get? Alpha bi she'armelei hiskabel. So as we saw, the Amrin and Adam Yudeshim shlichas Kabbalah. He knows he cannot make a shliach Kabbalah, but Gamanasal Shem Halacha. He really intended to make him into a shliach halacha. v'tiskabel b'hoylach kaimer, who's saying accept it and bring it. Okay. Amar Rav Tashma. Katana she'amra, if you have a katana, a young girl, that she says hiskabeli giti. Now again, a girl or a woman cannot. A woman could make a shliach, and she could make a shliach kabal. But over here, we're talking about a situation where she is a katana. So ain't get. Ad she get liyad. It's not a get until it actually gets into her hands. Even though normally an adult woman who says makes a shliach kabbalah, once that shliach is makabel to get, that's it. She's divorced. However, since it's a katana, it has to come back to her. However, once it gets to her hands, it's a divorce. She made him into a shliach kabbalah, which means that that's all she was able to do. So the fact that that doesn't work because she's a katana, why do we say that once he continues and brings the get to her, that it's a get, but that makes him to a shliach halacha? She didn't appoint him as a shliach halacha. Ella, so why does it work? Because Amrina. Since the husband was going to divorce this katana, Meimer Amar, we say Tigarsh kol heicha de megarsha, that she'll be divorced. Again, we're trying to prove. So too, when it comes to an adult woman who says Havile Giti, she makes a shliach halacha that we said it's not a get even when it gets to her hands. But why don't we say that again? The husband obviously intended to divorce her, and therefore she should be divorced once it gets into her hands. So that's the question. If it applies like that by a katana, why don't we say the same thing here? So our answer is Hachi Hashta. Over there, Adam Yodeh Shein Shlichus Hakata. Everyone knows that a katan or a katana cannot make a shliach. So she cannot make a shliach halacha anyway, but she can't even make a shliach kabbalah. But and therefore, it was the shliach understood that he was being a shliach halacha for the husband, and that the husband's allowed to do because it's an adult. Hacha toy, but over here it was just a mistake. Again, she made a shliach halacha, which she can't do, so therefore it's nothing. Okay. Tashma, Havile Giti, which is, again, similar to what we just said before, the very beginning. She says, I want you to be a shliach halacha. Now, a woman cannot make a shliach halacha. And then, V'ishtecha amr hiskabli Giti, and then the shliach incorrectly says to the husband that I'm a shliach kabbalah. Hiskabli Giti, V'ishtecha, or let's say she says hiskabli Giti, I want you to be shliach l'kabbalah, which is acceptable. The ishtach amra, then the shliach incorrectly says havle giti. So in either situation, either way, vahu amra, the husband says hoylech v'tein la. So if he uses the language of hoylech v'tein la, zachila v'hiskabil la. If he uses these different languages, ratzalatzu yachser, then he could still retract because he's not a shliach kabbalah. However, mishigig get liyada migareshes. My love, kabbalah b'halacha halacha. So the husband uses the lashon pertaining to the shliach, which is not what the wife said, but she made him a shliach halacha. When the husband agrees to the shliach that he's a shliach kabbalah, and it says that it's a get lo kabbalah a halacha b'halacha l'kabbalah. Says Rashi, lo kabbalah diktani. When it says kabbalah, zachila v'hiskabala, I want you to be a shliach kabbalah, koi ahoylacha. That's on the case of where she made him into a shliach halacha, and he says shliach l'kabbalah, which means that he listens to her, to the shliach's words. Ishtacha amra, regarding the woman who says hiskabel, havili. The husband is saying, as the wife said to the shliach, both are saying the same thing. This is why it works, and it is a get. So Gemara says, well, 1 second. Why do we say it's only once it gets into her hands? Since it's a shliach kabbalah, as soon as the shliach gets it, it should be divorce? Why is it only once it gets there? So Shema Mina Adibur Didei Kasamich. We see we're actually relying on the Shliach's words. No Hachi Hashta. Hasim Karmele Halach Kamasha Amra. Hacha mi Karmele Halach Kamasha Amra. Says Rashi. Hacha de Karmela Zachav Iskabel. As the husband can't make the Shliach into a Shliach of Kabbalah. So that's the difference. Tanurban. Hiskabeli Giti. Again, she says, I want you to be a Shliach of Kabbalah, which she's allowed to do. V'ishtach, and the Shliach says, the Amr Hiskabeli Giti, which is exactly what she said. So everyone said, the Shliach and the wife finally are on the same page here. However, the husband says, Haylach V'teinla. I want you to be a Shliach of Halacha. I don't want you to accept the get and that's it. I'm only going to accept you as a Shliach of Halacha. So Zachila, V'skabela, Ratzalasa Lo Yachzer. In this situation, we say that he cannot retract. Says Rashi, Ksaver Haylech Kazachi Dami. Because since you use the language of Haylech, even though you were saying, oh, you're like a Shlech L'Halacha, but Haylech is Kazachi. And therefore, since you use that language, the husband did, so therefore the din is, he cannot retract. As soon as the Shliach gets it, that's it. Because Haylech is Kazachi Dam, which we've had numerous times in this Masechta. Rabbi Yomer Bekuon, in all these cases, he cannot retract. Do not want you to accept this as do not want you to be Shliach Kabbalah. You're saying it beferish. So in that situation, even though he said Haylech, and normally Haylech Kazachi, it's being very clear in his words that he does not want the get to be chal the second that the shliach gets it, and therefore it's only going to be once she receives it, and therefore he can retract in the middle. So Rabbi Haim Tanakama, it sounds like the same thing. Iboy Sema Iashi Asal Shemina. It's coming to tell you that if he says Iashi, so that's the chiddush. That in that situation, even though he uses Haylech, which we normally say Haylech Kazachi Dami, in this situation we don't say that, and therefore he could be chayzer because he specified and he said Iafshi. The Iboy Sema Hakamash Mulan is coming to teach us Man Tanakama Rebbe. It's just coming to tell you that it was Rebbe who said this statement. Iboy Fret Gemara Hayloch. If the person doesn't say the language of Haylech, because Haylech is Kazachi Dami. Whatever he says Hayloch, this is yours. Rab Nasin Kazachi Dami Olav Kazachi Dami. Using this different language, not Haylech, but Hayloch. Does that also constitute as Kazachi, and therefore he cannot retract once he uses that language? Tashma Ha'omer, Hiskabel get zel ishti, O Haylech get zel ishti, Rotalach so yachsar. Only in that situation can he retract. Rotalach so yachsar. In that situation, he can retract. Ha'isha she'amar hiskabel giti. If the woman says b'makabel my get, rotalach so lo yachsar. So again, because he said hiskabel get zeh, he can't make a shliach Kabbalah, but he can't make a shliach Kabbalah, but she can, and therefore once she says you're my shliach, you're my shliach Kabbalah, once that shliach gets it, then the husband cannot retract anymore. That's why Ratzal Lasar Yasar. Continue on Samach Gimel Mid Beis. My love, is it not beheloch Rav Nasan? The husband uses the language of heloch, and therefore it's coming to tell us the answer to our question, whether it's if not just hoylech, but even heloch is kazachi dami. Lo, b'hoylech. Rebbe. It's only hoylech kazachi. Haylech is kazachi dami, but maybe not heloch. That we don't know. Tashma. L'fichach, therefore. Im amar lo habal. If the husband says, I avshi shedekabala, I do not want you to be a shleach Kabbalah. Lo haylech v'teinla. I want you to bring it to her. Ratzalach so yachser. He can retract because he said, I avshi, that I do not want you to be a shleach Kabbalah. Time to yashi. Halo emer yashi. Ratzalach so yachser. He cannot retract. My love. Behelech Rav Nasan. Lo b'hoylech b'Rebbe. Again, it's kind of a difficult question because the very language of the, at least the Girsa is Hoylech v'tein law. Okay. Tashma. Holech get zel ishti, ratzalach yachser. He can retract. Because again, he is a shleach halacha. So until the get gets to her hands, he can retract. Heilach get zeli ishti ratzalach lo yachsor. When he says heilach, he could not retract. Now this is kind of hard to understand. Holech, he could retract. Heilach, he can't. So man shaman ladi amr b'hoilech ratzalach yachsor. Who's of the opinion that hoilech, that language you could retract? Rav Nosson, v'kaimer only b'hoilech, but b'heilach ratzalach lo yachsor shma mina heilach kazachi dami shma mina, which is interesting. So heilach is kazachi, but holech is not kazachi. Okay, but again, that's a raya, at least as we see according to the Shita of Rav Nosson, that heilach is kazachi. Itmar. If the wife says hiskabel legiti, I want you to be makabel my get, what she has the right to say. And then the shliach says that the ishtacha amar hiskabel legiti. The husband, again, the wife and the shliach say the same thing. But who amar no hoilich v'teinla. I do not want you to be a shliach habala. I want you to be a shliach ha'haylacha, which means I don't want you to get the get and then automatically she's divorced. I want the ability to be able to change my mind in the interim. Amar Rav Abba, Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav Nasa Shlucho Ushlucha V'Choyletzes. Says Rashi, what happens in Meis Habal? Kodim she get liyada. Now, what happens if the man dies before she received the get? Choyletzes v'lo misyavemes. We say that we will have her at least do chalitza. We don't want her to do yibum. Apparently, there's a suffix here, but chalitza still needs to be done, because the fact is that even though this shliach got the get, but because he said this, it's possible that it's not going to be a get until it gets into her hands. And since he died before that, so she has a din of being zokak liyavam, but because there's some sfeika, which we're going to see over here, so therefore we only do chalitza. Says the Gemara, remember the Masafkali Rabbi, he holds kazachi dami, olav kazachi dami. L'chayra, he holds it's a suffix, which is why he says only do chalitza and not yibum or fakert. If you hold hoylech as kazachi, then for sure she's free. She's considered divorced, and therefore there's no din chalitza either. If you hold that hoylech is lav kazachi, then she should do yibum. Itmar hoylech man laplaini. A person uses the language of hoylech, bring this money to a certain person, sheni chayv layon money. Amarav chaybach riuso. So in that situation, the lova, the borrower, as the money is in transit, which is based on accounting FOB shipping point or FOB destination free on board, says Rashi chayv hamishaleach bach riuso. The loiv is chayiv while it's in transit. Shahari lo tzivahu hamalva l'shluchay. V'im bo laxer enu chayzer. But if he wants to retract, he cannot retract. Now, why can he not retract? Must be because as soon as he said hoylech, it's kazachi dami, and therefore he cannot retract and get his money back. That's it. The money is gone. Basically, it's going to be in the hands. Basically, it's in the hands of the malva. So the question is, we see over here clearly, well, at least according to the second part of this, is that once he says hoylech, he cannot be chayzer, must be because hoylech is kazachi. So why, in this same situation when it comes to a get, do we say that she has to do chalitza? L'chayra, she shouldn't have to do anything, because if he said hoylech get zili ishti, then the din should be just like rotzel lachsol yasar. And he shouldn't have to do anything. So hasam suffik mamoin lakula, because over here we have it's a case of monetary issues, right? So since comes money, we're lenient, and therefore we say hamotzim mechavero al yadai al tachtain lafikach enu chayzer, because the money is no longer in your hands, so that it's like it's in the malva's hands, and therefore even if you want to be chayzer, we say hamotzim mechavero al varai. At that point, it's now considered to be the malvas. That's money. Over here, because we're unsure what the status of a hoylech, whether it's kazach or not, we're going to require chalitza. Omer Rav. And we're going to see a machlokes Rav and Rav Chanina here. Omer Rav, ein ha'isha oisa shliach hakabel agita miyad shliach bala. This we had before, actually. That a woman cannot make a shliach to accept a get from her husband's shliach. A woman can make a shliach, but if the husband makes a shliach and has the get being brought to her by a shliach, she has to accept it from that shliach. She cannot point the shliach to a mekabel from that shliach. That is the din. Rav Chanina oimer isha isa shliach lekabel logita miyad shliach bala. It's not true. Rav Chanina says a woman could make a shliach to accept a get on behalf of her husband's shliach. So my time to Rav. Why does Rav say you can't do this? So the Gemara gives a couple answers. Mishum bizayin debal, because it's embarrassing and humiliation to the husband. Why? Says Rashi. Again, we had this before. Ksavar kibalti kiloini be'eineha she'enu mikabalto ba'atzma, that she thinks it's low in my eyes that he doesn't want to basically give it. I don't want to be makabel myself. The ilu ki avda lekabel miyad habal in kanach shash b'zayin. So in this situation, the fact that she is not even willing to accept it from the shliach is something which is an embarrassment and humiliation. Therefore, the husband will be like, you know what? If that's how you're going to be, then I'm not going to do this. I appointed a shliach to give it to you, not to give to another shliach. What is that? Rashi says, when the husband gives a get, let's say the husband puts the get in someone else's chatzar, and then then let's say afterwards the woman is kaina that chatzar, then it's not a get. The get needs to be at the time of the giving, in her hand or in her chatzar. But in this situation, if you put it into someone else's chatzar, then only, let's say, a day later, she was kind of that chatzar, it wasn't her at the time that the get was put down. It says Rashi v'gazrinan, and therefore we make a gezer shli yikabel shliach ha'isha miyad shliach baal. We don't want her shliach to be makabel get from another shliach of her husband. Mishum dedami lahashakadam habal. It's comparable to, again, where the husband went first. And put it in the hands of a shliach. And then afterwards, she made a shliach to be makabel. Then based on that, people will say, Chatzar Havi, shliach habal. Okay. So my binai, what's the difference between these two reasons? If she made the shliach first, and then afterwards him. So first the reason of bizayin says bizayin. However, this gezerah of chatzer habalach mikan is only when he made the shliach and then she did it. But if she made it first and then him, then it's okay. It says Rashi, Dida kaidim shemasar habal liyad shlucha dahashna loydam lechatzer habalach mikan. Question 2. Himasar isha shliach kabagita miyad shliach bala. So one opinion says yes, and then there's another opinion. The opinion of Rav says no, either because they're designed the Baal, or because of Gezer Mishom Chatzar Habalach Mikan. So if the husband made the shliach l'hayulacha, she can no longer make a shliach a kabbalah. However, if let's say she first made the shliach a kabbalah, and then only afterwards the husband made a shliach halacha, then according to the gezerah of chatzar haba mitlach mikan, so that's not an issue. Hahu gaver. So the Gemara says the following story. There's a person dishadul agita with a besu that he sent a get, azul shilucha, and he sent a shliach. He found ki yosva v'kol lasha. She was sitting and kneading. Armula helach gitach. So basically, here's your get. Armalei l'havi biyadach. Let it stay in your hand. In other words, being a shliach l'kabbalah. Let it be that you're my shliach l'kabbalah. So the get was already in the shliach's hands, and then she afterwards appointed the guy, and she said, you know what, I'm busy right now, I don't have the hands, my hands are dirty, you'll be my shliach kabbalah, and that's it. No, that should be a get. If he was there, Rav Chanina, then he would have paskins such a way, and he would have said, as Rashi says, that would work. Normally, Rav Chanina, Avdi Ba'uvdi, you saying they should be divorced? But there's an issue that the shliach always has to be able to go back and to give the report to the husband. But over here, that doesn't work. It says Rashi, "V'loimer asisi shlichucha, I did your shlichus. The shlichus she'ena royal lachzor, a shlichus which cannot be returned, lahagid, eno shlichus." So this is a situation where, since he was now appointed as a new job, so then it's considered like the first job he couldn't have reported on. So it shouldn't work. So shalchulu committed Ravami shalchahu lo chas shlichus etzol, and therefore it's a problem. Rav Chiba Rabba Omer nisyashiv b'davar, says Rashi, n'ayin bo. Let's investigate into this. Hadar shalchulu committed Rav Chiba Rabba Omer kol hani shalchulu of azli. So all of these, says Rashi, kol elu pa'amim chayzim b'sholchim. All these other times they return. Ki heichin masafkehu l'didhu hachanami masafkehu on l'didan. There just was a suffix there, suffix here. So in this situation, because there is this suffix in the base medrash, what the din is, so in the case where this man would have died, so in that case we're going to require her to at least do chalitza, the suffix. Get v'chalitza. Actually, such a situation happened where she made him into a shliach, la kabbalah, after he already had it, and we required a get because he cannot finish his shlichus, but he also required chalitza. Tarti doesn't make sense. If she got a get, so then why did he need chalitza if he died? So get mechayim. If he was still alive, another get was required. The chalitza achamisa. If no get was given and then he died, then we would do chalitza. Huda havi karila nafata. There was this individual that was called Nafata, Kach Shema. That was her name. Ozul Sahadi, Kosov Tafata. On the get, they miswrote her name and they wrote Tafata. Omer Rav Yitzhak Bar Shmuel Bar Marta Mishmei Rab. Also, Edim Shlichuson. The Edim did their shlichus, which apparently means it's a good get. So Maska Barava Mi Karmel Lahu Kasubu Chaspa V'Havula. They say write on earthenware and give it to her? They never did their shlichus as they wrote on an invalid get. What do you mean they did their shlichus? El Omer Rabba Vadai Ikosav Sahadi Gita Malia. If let's say they wrote with witnesses a proper get, V'Ava, they got lost, Azu Edem Shlichuson. Then they did their shlichus. Says Rashi, if it was lost before it was given, also Edem Shlichuson. In Rishayin Lichta get Sheni, which means you cannot write a second get. Litin will give her another one. Shahari Kfar Kasu get kosher. So if the get was already get kosher and then it was lost, then in that situation the din would be that you can't write another get because they did what they were told to do, and that was to have this get prepared. And the fact that the get was all prepared, it got lost, so that's not their issue anymore. Fine. So Maskav Rav Nachman Mi Kaimer Hu Kisvu Vyanchua Bikisaichu. What do you mean that the shlichus was done? That once it was written and it got lost, they can't write a new one. He didn't say write it and keep it in your pocket. Obviously, he wanted it to be given. So if the get wasn't given and got lost, they should be able to rewrite a new one. El Amr Nachman Kaisav Nice in the film Me'apavim. It's not true. You can actually write it and give it 100 times. Doesn't mean you give it 100 times, but if it even gets lost, you can keep writing it because obviously the shlichus was not completed until the get was actually given. Bomine Rava Merav Nachman. If the husband says Kisvu, write it, Lutnu l'shliach, and give it to a shliach, Mahu. Saluki Salukuhu, have they removed themselves? Or are we concerned of tircha? Says Rashi. Imtim Saloimer, Bahachtoloi Amr El Kisvu Tenu L'Shliach. All that he said was write it and give it to a Shliach. The name Kosvu Tenulo, and they did it. The Avad, and then the get got lost. The Asa Shlichusam. Do we say that they actually did everything they were supposed to do? The Kol Mashitzivim Gomru. They completed it. The Yasu. So Hachi Mai. What's the din? If that is the case, that which again we didn't say that. But let's say all he tells them to do is write it. And then he does it, and then it gets lost. That I did my shlichus, and therefore you don't rewrite it. So if that's a din, mi amrin and kivandi amr kisu tenu l'shliach v'yoylich la. And he adds, and I want you to give it, right? Asan shlichusam lachser v'lichtoi. So in that situation, they could rewrite it actually get liyan until the get is in her hands. So kach pirish lahem kol kach. That's why he was so specific. Or maybe it doesn't make any difference. So again, that's the question. Kisvu tenu l'shliach mao saluki salkahu. Are they now removed? The dilmo tircha didhu chayish. So Armali Ravino Ravashi. Armali Ravino Ravashi v'yochla mahu teku. He will give it to her. If he says the yochla mahu teku. Also, if she says toyli giti, take my get, imrata lasol yasu, can't retract on rabbanon toyli, but the solli v'heli b'yadcha kulam lashon kabbalah in his own language lashon kabbalah, which is what she's allowed to do. Okay, we're going to stop there, and maybe we have a question here. Question TA1. Mahu basvara pshita tvei the ish havishliach kabbalah mamad the ish havishliach olacha. This is easy. Actually we saw this in yesterday's daf. How do we know that it's more of a davar pashit that you should be able to appoint a shliach kabbalah than a shliach halacha? So it's actually also on the Gemara test. It's because when it comes to a father, let's see where this is. Because ish have pashimina isha ish have a shlecha kabbalah, that you can make a husband or a man in general can be a shlecha kabbalah for a woman. Shchen avekabel get levito katana. So that was TA1, which was actually on daf samach beis. Let's say there's TA2. The isha shamar labala. A woman says girshtani nemenes beis oiven inu nemenes apnefaneha. Fine, we didn't do that one yet. TB1. Havili giti v'ishtacha. Havili giti v'ishtacha. So that was what she said. You're a shliach halacha, which is the beginning over here. V'ishtacha, and the shliach said that his kabili giti v'hu omer hoylach kamasha amra mehema tamim de'en megrasha safa v'shegei get liyada. Why would it not work? Either the bal dibor the shliach samach is relying on the shliach. V'nasan al das kabbalah. Or the shliach akar shlichus haylacha mimenu, that the shliach knew what was going on. He didn't want to be a shliach lahalacha. Ve'afal pi the nimlach loy mahani kiva lo kibulav betchil shlichus dabal. He really didn't want to do this shlichus. So therefore, based on that reason, again, it would not be migurashas. Okay. Adkan.